some were baptized as babies, and some haven't been baptized, or some maybe forgot about it. I have a few stories about baptism. Years ago, I was in a church in Missouri, and we had a new custodian who was Roman Catholic, and this stuff about filling a tank with water was kind of new to him. And I came in on Sunday morning, I think it may have been Easter, and the mist was rising from the baptistry because he had gotten it so hot. I mean, you could have scalded chickens in it, you know. And so, you know, of course, we drank some out and refilled it, and it was still warm, but it was okay. And then when I was at Broadmoor, it was another Easter. We had a couple of boys that were going to be baptized, and whatever system we had there had failed during the night, and so the water was just cold as could be. And so we told the boys that, you know, this is going to be cold. You still want to go through with it? Oh, yeah. And the first boy that stepped in it, when he put his foot in there, there was an expletive followed by, "This one, it's cold." But we washed that away, you know. I heard a story about a guy that was in a church. It was his first Sunday, and he had to do a baptism. And so it was a situation, you know, Baptist was up there, and there was this big curtain in front. And so he did the baptism, and then he turned the wrong way, and he goes over, and the stairs are only on one side. And so he's over on one side, he's kind of out of the way, out of sight, because the curtain is in front of him. And, you know, and the service is starting, and he realizes, well, he's got to get to the other side to get out, but he doesn't want people to realize that, you know, he's on the wrong side. So he decides to kind of swim underwater. But he forgot that there was kind of a window in front, so people could see him swimming. And I heard my all-time favorite story is from a church in Texas. This was, oh, I don't know, back 50, 60 years ago. And it was a small country church, and the baptistry was like in the floor of the chancel. And, you know, they kept it covered up except for when they were having baptism. And it was a small church, and, you know, pretty well the sanctuary was it. And so when they would have a baptism, they would have wires that stretched across, and they would hang sheets. So there would be, you know, give them a kind of a curtain to pull. And also they'd have rooms kind of walled off so people could change clothes, you know, and put on dry clothes after the baptism. So they had a number of baptisms, and so there was lots of men and women back in the changing area. And they had a hymn, and the song leader was so excited. We had all these baptisms going on, and he was leading the music with great enthusiasm and forgot about that hole in the floor in the chancel. And so he stepped back and began to fall and started doing this and grabbed those sheets around the side and pulled everything down. And here are these people standing, changing clothes. All of a sudden, everybody's aware of what all this is happening. Life gets complicated. I have a story from the Old Testament. It's kind of a form of baptism in a way, and it is about, and actually Ellie's pretty well told the story, but the scripture talks about Naaman, who was the commander of the king of Aram, and which is a country other than Israel in that time. He was a great man in high favor with his master because by him the Lord had given victory. And even though he was a mighty warrior, like all of us, he's susceptible to illness and disease, and he suffered from leprosy, which was as you may know, different kinds of skin disease, but it was all kind of horrid. Leprosy is a terrible disease that is easily treated now, but would just basically cause your flesh to rot. And anyway, different kinds of diseases. Back then, there was not much treatment for it. In Naaman's household was a young girl who had been taken captive. She was from Israel. And she said to her mistress, "If only my Lord were with the prophet who's in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." And when we are sick and need a cure, we'll do about anything. So Naaman went in and told his lord, the king, what the girl had said. And the king of Aram said, "Go then, I will send along a letter to the king of Israel." And so Naaman went, and taking along 10 talents of silver, that's a ton of money, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of garments. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, which read, "When this letter reaches you, know that I have sent to you my servant Naaman, that you may cure him of his leprosy." And the king read the letter, and this was not in his job description, and he tore his clothes and said, "Am I God to give death or life that this man sends word to me to cure a man of his leprosy?" Just look and see how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me. But when Elisha, the prophet, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, he sent a message to the king. "Why have you done that? Let the man come to me that he may learn that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman came with his horses and chariots and halted at the entrance of Elisha's house. And Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, "Go wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored and you shall be clean." But Naaman became angry and went away, saying, "Well, I thought that for me he would surely come out and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and would wave his hand over the spot and cure the leprosy. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean?" And he turned away in a rage. But his servants approached him and said, "Father, if the prophet had commanded you to do something difficult, would you have not done it? How much more when all he said to you was, 'Wash and be clean'?" So he went down and immersed himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the word of the man of God, and his flesh was restored like the flesh of a boy, and he was clean. I have always enjoyed that story because it's not very long, but it's got some drama in it. And, the haughty, proud guy kind of gets put in his place by the servant. And there's a happy ending. He's cured. And I guess the servants are the heroes here. He was offended because what the prophet told him to do was just so easy. Have you been to the doctor and the person you wanted to talk to didn't come in the room, but it was someone on staff? And maybe you weren't happy because your pride might have been offended. No matter how important you are, you get to ER, we're all the same. So here Naaman is this important guy with lots of authority, this general, and he goes to the house of the prophet in another country, and the prophet doesn't even come out to see him. He just sends a messenger out. And then he tells him to go wash in the Jordan. And the Jordan is not always this pristine blue water. It is often muddy. Really not much of a river, kind of pathetic in some times of the year. And so Naaman is thinking, why have I done this? I've gone all this way, and I brought all this money, and this guy doesn't care about that, and he just tells me to do something kind of stupid. Well, you know, I get identified with that. I had a good friend years ago, and he was a new family doctor in town, and he was quite open in saying that, you know, 90% of the people who come to me for something are going to get better if they just give it a little time. You know, he was kind of realistic about how sometimes we treat illnesses. And so people would come to see him, and they wanted to carry out a prescription because they wanted to get some medicine to make them feel better. And in fact, even having the prescription sometimes make you feel better because you know there's something you can do. And he didn't write a lot of prescriptions, and he had people in the town talking about him. You know, well, he didn't do anything. You know, he just told you you were going to get better, but he didn't do anything. So here, Naaman is quite upset because the prophet basically, as he thought, didn't do anything. And then, you know, fortunately, he's got the servants that are wise and say, you know, if he has to do something hard, I mean, I'm sure this guy worked his way up to be general by doing a lot of difficult things and staying power and whatever, and said, you would have done that. And, you know, I guess so. And so, you know, he has to go to the Jordan River, and I don't know if he tells everybody, don't look, but, you know, he's got to take off his if he had armor on or all that, you know, general stuff, and then get down in the water and wash. And then get out, and then get back in again and wash again. And then get out and get back in again and wash again. And then get back in, and so on. Which, it must have seemed to him at the time absurd. But then, you know, here's the happy ending. He's healed. And he goes on home. And we hear no more of him in our Hebrew Bible, but the 4th chapter of Luke, Jesus, in one of his early sermons, talks about how, you know, God works in many ways. And here, in those days, there were no one healed of leprosy except for Naaman the Syrian. So it was a story that was passed down in time, and Jesus knew about it. Sometimes we make stuff harder than it needs to be. You know, baptism is pretty simple, really. You know, if you want to be baptized, we take care of all the details. You know, if you'll show up with something you can wear to get wet in, we'll give you a robe, we'll even give you a towel, we'll tell you what to do. Pretty simple. And yet, something happens in that is healing. And something happens with that process that puts a mark on you that says you belong to God. Water is really powerful. We have to have it to live. Our bodies are 60% water, I've read. And we know that water has healing properties. By the way, the 5 factors in longevity: heredity, attitude, I'll skip number 3, diet, and exercise. Number 3 is hydration. Lots of older people get sick and die because they don't drink enough water. So, hey, that's a lot more fun than diet and exercise. You know? We need water, but water sometimes is scary and can be damaging and deadly. So, we are people that hear stories of wonderful things that happen in our Scripture, and we think, oh, you know, that's not possible for me. Because we've made things too complicated. Jesus, at one point, 10th chapter of Luke, he sends out 70 people that were following him, and he tells them, go out in the towns and tell them the good news. But don't take any extra stuff with you. Just, clothes on your back kind of thing. And when you go to a house, say, peace upon this house. And if people have you in, then just stay there. Don't go one house to another. Just stay where you are and share the good news with them. And just whatever they put before you, eat it. Don't complain. And these 70 went out and did this, and they came back and reported to Jesus. It was wonderful. And the message was spread. And Jesus said, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. It was just something simple to do. How are we, as disciples these days, to serve Him? How about we live simply and be vulnerable, to rely on grace and hospitality? Is it really that hard? Do justice, love mercy, walk humbly, pray, listen, learn, and love. Break the bread, drink the wine, bear the burden, share the peace, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Get out of your pride and get in the water. Just relax a minute and watch this little video.